They say everything old is new again, bucket hats, baggy jeans, and concerns about fluoride. A classic of the paranoia genre, but now enjoying a resurgence as RFK Jr. is at the center of a trend, of all people, to question widely accepted practices of public health. On the other hand, I have done a little bit of research, one of the most dangerous phrases in modern life, and maybe, possibly, the anti-fluoride claims aren't exactly of the ilk of gamma rays from the Empire State Building are controlling my every thought and deed. It's obviously the Chrysler Building. Joining me now is the only person I know who has the teeth and temerity to take me through this question as we play Is That Bullshit? With Sadie Dingfelder, the author of A Face-Blind Reporter's Journey into the Science of Sight, Memory, and Imagination, and now Fluoride. Sadie, welcome back.
Thank you for having me. I am so excited to talk about teeth.
Did you grow up in a fluoridated community?
I assumed I did. And
yeah,
I remember...
you're American.
Yeah. I remember mouthwash in school. Like, I remember them doing some sort of swishy mouthwash thing at one point. And
really?
also...
Like a demonstration how to, or just because...
They passed out little cups. They made us all swish it, and then we all spit it somewhere.
Okay.
I don't know.
Somewhere. and then they collected that and used the DNA against you. So says RFK Jr.
Yeah, but... So I did this deep dive. I read a book and about 50 articles on fluoride, and we've been fighting about fluoride since fluoride first hit American water streams. But what's interesting is that the discovery of fluoride was actually the discovery of something that was causing a tooth problem, which it was called Colorado brown stain. Does that sound like anything you've heard of?
Yeah, I think they opened for the string cheese incident at Red Rocks one year.
Right. Yeah. So Colorado brown stain was this mysterious disease, and it was causing the teeth of these people in Colorado Springs to look very black and mottled and pockmarked. And so a dentist in 1900s figured out that fluoride was causing this. It was very high levels of fluoride, somewhere up in the range of like 3 parts per million. Mm-hmm. So we know that
just sort of leaching into the groundwater.
Yes, leaching into the groundwater from volcanic rock. Oof. But so these teeth looked terrible. They were black, they were pockmarked, but they were not getting cavities.
Oh, I see. Yeah, because that was my question. I mean, you would want to run away from the thing making teeth look bad, but they were not getting cavities. They were just turning brown and black.
Yes.
How would, maybe this is, I know you read 50 articles in a book, but how would it do both things? Why is it both protective and destructive?
Yes, it's just one of these things where it flops out, it switches out a molecule. The molecule it switches out is hydroxyapatite. Sure. And this is topically. So this is if you apply it topically, it switches out hydroxyapatite and it switches it for fluorapatite. Mm-hmm. And that's a little bit stronger and it's resistant to tooth decay.
Interesting.
But it does make your teeth more brittle, and at high amounts, it makes your teeth pocked, and it interferes with the creation of the enamel to begin with.
Isn't tooth decay just a form of brittleness? This is confusing to me.
I know. It's what you're doing is you're upgrading your armor if you have a small amount of fluoride in your water. But if you have too much fluoride, you start to get pock marks in your teeth, and it creates like Anyway, your developing teeth get messed up.
So the idea behind fluoride is maybe a little bit like the moldy bread of penicillin, an accidental discovery born of what they thought was combating the ill effects of something in the natural world.
Yeah, and there's a lot of analogies to vaccines, but but we discovered Colorado brown stain, and they figured out fluoride was causing it, but they also figured out mysteriously it was causing teeth to be stronger. And this was they made these discoveries in the early part of the 1900s, but by 1945, when we started fluorinating water in Grand Rapids, Michigan, the state of the American smile was dire.
Was there an official report every year?
So what we have these army
smile. Well, it could be because we were worried about the war, and so there was a lot of frowning. But
You would think that, but in 1945, we were like winning the war, right? And
Right,
this is
right,
kind of
right.
important because this was a moment of peak trust in the government, in the American government, and
Yes.
peak belief in science. And so we were like, surely there's got to be a solution. Because, I mean, let me tell you how bad our teeth were. They, the 10% of new Army recruits, these are 18-year-old people, were not allowed into the Army because they had fewer than 12 teeth, which was the
Fewer than
minimum.
12. Oh, so it's good that the Army had the standard of 13 teeth you're in. We just need a little over a third of the teeth, and we're
Yeah.
fine.
That's correct. Yeah. And
Did they bicuspids got special priority over incisors? Or they
Yes.
just had this thing? Go
you
ahead.
had to have 3 sets of chewing teeth
Awesome.
and
This is
3
awesome.
sets of incisors.
Yeah.
And so that was a problem. That was a problem. And so this was a national defense issue at this point,
Yeah,
American
yeah.
teeth. And
Because if you get
so-
into trench warfare, might have to bite a Frenchman or something.
And have you heard of trench mouth?
Yes.
Yeah, so trench mouth was like that. Dental problems were a problem in World War I too, where, so the other thing that was really nuts is just an indicator of how bad American teeth were. If you would give a traditional present for a wedding was a set of dentures.
Real, traditional. And a wedding, and back then people were getting married at 23.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So no one had teeth. Yeah, teeth were bad. And what's really interesting though is that before, like in the previous, I don't know, just like 20 to 30 years earlier, American teeth were not that bad. It was the advent of lots of cheap processed white sugar. And this is, of course, a worldwide thing. But so our diet changed, our teeth got nasty. We had to do something about it. And the government had just discovered, or people had just discovered, that fluoride made teeth stronger.
It was up to Grand Rapids to perform the experiment.
Yes, Grand Rapids, they were very proud and excited, and they did this experiment. They compared them with a small town nearby that I can't remember the name of. And the experiment was
called
so
Small Rapids, yes.
Small Rapids, and the experiment was so successful.
Small trickle. Sorry, go ahead. I can think of many opposite names or 50% decline names from Grand Rapids. Yes, go ahead.
Right. So it was so different. I mean, it was a 60% decrease in cavities compared to the control group. As these results were coming in, the control group was like, we don't want to be control group anymore. So
Right.
it actually cut the whole study short.
Well, this is scientific ethics, right? If something is working so well, or if the control group is suffering, then you have to intercede and say, that's it. There's enough information. We're going to help you people too.
Right. And at 1 part per million, which is what the target was back then, it's now lower. It's now 0.7. You do not get Colorado brown stain. At the most, you get like a little bit of whitey streaks here and there.
So the fluoride was making the teeth stronger, and the experiment was cut short. I guess you would say, but what about the long-term effects? And so it would take many years to figure that out. What are they, and how'd they figure it out?
Well, it's interesting because you would think we've been doing this for so long. Surely we would know, right?
Yes.
But the early proponents of fluoride they were so intense about it. And it was like sort of an obvious public health slam dunk that there was a huge chilling effect on any research that tried to look into what else fluoride might be doing.
Right. Just like in my introduction, I indicated that being against fluoride for many years, I mean, for my life, most of my life, up until the Oracle RFK came on the scene, was seen as just only a fringe opinion would adhere to that. The evidence was in, our teeth are better. We've been doing this for decades and decades. People aren't growing 3 or 4 heads. And then I also know, and maybe in your 50 articles in your book, you got into some countries in Europe treated teeth with fluoride and some didn't, right?
Yeah, but what did you cover Dr. Strangelove in your intro?
I did not.
I guess it's
that, yeah.
very dated, but
Yeah.
I came into this whole question thinking people who are afraid of fluoride are crazy, just like Dr. Strangelove.
Yes.
And people did worry that it was a communist plot, and kind of hilariously, someone actually snuck like water out of Russia, out of Moscow, to see if they were fluorinating it, and they were not fluorinating it in the 80s.
Well, there you go. Yeah. There you go.
So it might, I don't know.
How could it not be? And how are their teeth, by the way, in Russia? Because I saw a lot of pictures, and they don't seem great.
Probably not. Probably
Yeah.
not. But so, okay, yeah. So there was a long period of time where there was very little history on the long-term effects of fluoride. But interestingly, we do know a lot about the acute effects of fluoride and also the effects on bones. So if too much fluoride. So if you have amounts that are more than 1.5 parts per million, you start to see this thing called bone fluoridosis, which is like brittle bones. You can get like very disabled, and you can have hip fractures, all these things, because interestingly, fluoride, again, works best when applied topically, not when ingested. We didn't know that, though. We did not know that in 1945. They actually thought that the school kids had to eat it, and it would affect their developing teeth and blah, blah, blah. And they would see results in years and years, and they actually started seeing results within months.
Was that processed Wonder Bread with the enrichments? Was one of the enrichments fluoride? They were putting it in the food supply?
No, but there is fluoridated salt, I believe, in France.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not just iodized. So another thing that we didn't know at the time is that there is a very clear neurotoxic effect of fluoride in very high concentrations. So like twice as much as the current 0.7 limit.
Yeah. So a lot of these either scares or concerns often have an element of truth, right? Red dye number 5 or some saccharin. Yes, it's true that a certain dose will kill a mouse, and then you do and extrapolate to a human body, it would be like 7 garbage trucks worth every week.
Right. And so, yeah, if you have twice as much fluoride than America currently recommends, there seems to be pretty solid evidence from places where naturally occurring fluoride in the water makes for highly fluoridated water, including West Texas. But most of the research comes out of China and India, where they're part of the fluoride belt, which is like a volcanic sort of rock place where there's a lot of naturally occurring fluoride. And so they actually have to take a lot of fluoride out of their water to be healthy.
Wow. Maybe there could be a fluoride exchange. We need the fluoride. They need to get rid of the fluoride. It could lead to flourishing or fluoridishing among international relations. The fluoride belt. Never heard of that. The fluoride belt. Yeah.
So the question is, the question you asked me to answer is like, I assumed I was at the level that we have community water fluoridation.
Yes. Thank you for clarifying it. Right. At the levels that, and by the way, it's everywhere in America. Is that still the case?
It's not everywhere. And in fact, it's interesting. Over time, there's battles. Like I thought this was a new battle, but there have been battles constantly in like different places in America are like, usually it seems like people are going to to not fluoridate the water. Like it seems like
that's the trend you're saying.
That's the overall trend. Yeah.
Yeah. Because, that is now the de facto situation is just doing it. So if you're interested in it, you're not interested in it where you want to advocate adding fluoride, since fluoride is everywhere. That's the default. So yeah, I understand why that would be the trend, because that is something new. But before we get to, and thank you for clarifying what the exact nature of our is that bullshit question was, I have looked at statistics about Europe, and in some countries they introduced fluoride, and in those countries, tooth decay or whatever standards they have, number of teeth in the mouths of recruits went down, or tooth decay went down, number of teeth went up. So fluoridated countries in Europe had a great increase in tooth health. Have you seen those charts? But I don't want to step on you as the expert in this, but there are also a couple countries, maybe Belgium, can't remember, don't want to denigrate Belgium if I'm wrong, where they didn't do this.
Yeah.
And you want to tell us what happened?
They had equally improving teeth health.
Yes.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
It is so interesting. And there's a famous paper that's called The Mystery of Declining. They don't say cavities in the literature. They say caries. So, but we're going to say cavities. The Mystery of Declining Cavities and Teeth worldwide. Like everyone's dental health has gotten better.
That's my least favorite episode of Scooby-Doo, by the way. But how do they solve the mystery? What answers the mystery?
We really don't know, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of good theories that I love. One of them is just the increase of antibiotics. That seems like it could have resulted in fewer cavities. Also, the big one is fluoride in toothpaste.
Right.
Yeah, because once we discovered after Grand Rapids or whatever, Crest, I think, was the first to have fluoridated toothpaste. Everyone was so excited about fluoride. Everyone started brushing their teeth. People were not brushing their teeth before this.
Yeah.
So everyone starts brushing their teeth. We've got fluoride in our toothpaste, and that's probably much of the effect. And so
I'm gonna share with you a memory from my elementary school.
Yeah.
And it just hit me. We had some sort of dental expert, and they're hard to book, They're on a circuit. They hit all the elementary schools. So maybe a nurse, possibly a local dentist, come in, and they showed us the back of the toothpaste we were using. And they said, you have to have this sign, and it says MFP, and it's in a little, I don't want to make a pun, crest. It looks official, MFP, which stands for, as I'm sure you know, maximum fluoride protection. And I remember going home, looking, I was desperate to see, do we have this special MFP toothpaste? And indeed we did. And I told my mom and dad, we got to make sure we have MFP. And they're like, yeah, I think we do. We use Colgate, whatever we use. And then I went into the bathroom. I looked at all the toothpaste. It was up to snuff. Whew, was I a compliant young man.
That worked so well for you. I ignored the people at the talking at us. So there was a Cochrane report that attempted to quantify how much we can really attribute to community fluoridation levels. And it's a range. It's somewhere between 15% and 25% of our tooth improvement today, if you took out the fluoride in the water, because we have more quote unquote background fluoride. Oh, by the way, iced tea has a shocking amount of fluoride in it, and all I do is drink tea all day.
Yeah, but doesn't that lead to Colorado brown tooth syndrome?
And and we didn't even start to talk about the brain stuff. So at high levels, which includes 2.2 parts per million, which is iced tea, which is what I drink instead of water. It's bad for your brain. It's bad for children's brains and fetuses' brains. No one seems to be looking at adult brains.
Don't feed your fetus iced tea. I always say that.
Well, honestly though, if I were pregnant, I would not drink tap water, and I would not drink tea for sure. And if you're making baby formula, do not put tap water in the baby formula. I think this is pretty appreciated as a cautious thing to do, because we really literally do not know if it affects at concentrations lower than 1.5. And there's some evidence that it does affect brain development at lower concentrations.
Interesting.
There's two studies that I found that were pretty recent, and they were both considered to be good studies. They were part of in 2023, the NIH put out this paper that everyone freaked out about. And the paper basically said, we don't know about the concentrate, low levels of fluoride do to children's and infants' brains. But we do know that anything higher than I think it was 1.5, it might have been 1.7, anything higher than this amount does affect the brains, right? So it just interpreting that, it's well, if we don't know lower, but we know for sure for higher, then, and there's no benefit for fetuses to eat fluoride, or,
right.
And this is also why a lot of little kids don't, you don't want to eat toothpaste, right? You don't want, and you have to keep your kids from eating their toothpaste. So my sister-in-law, I think my nephews and niece do not brush their teeth with fluoridated toothpaste because they'll swallow it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. This is a cautious parents,
it's not taking it too far. Here's the deal. I understand the caution of science, not saying we don't know, and no means something specific to them, right? We don't have enough data, or the data that we do have is not showing a p-value of over 0.3 or whatever. We can't say that it's scientifically provable that it does or doesn't have an effect. However, I have to default to the fact that for the last 75 years, almost every American has been blasted with fluoride in their tap water. And not drinking the tap water hasn't really been a thing up until, a dozen years ago. It's like, just take hundreds of millions of people's experience. Is there some gigantic uptick in brain injuries or in other sort of injuries or a lowering of IQ? Wouldn't we have seen that if it's dangerous?
Right. And actually IQ has gone up.
Of course.
So we have not seen like this massive public health effect. But when they do these studies, there's 2 studies, one in Canada, one in Mexico. And they found they found a range, like if you had for every increase of 1 part per million in your water of fluoride, like, and we're talking levels lower than like 1.5, like acceptable levels of fluoride. Mm-hmm. You have a decrease in IQ of about 3 points. Let me look it up.
Whoa.
It's a lot.
So,
but there's a weird statistical thing, though, where the Canada one found that it only affected boys.
Uh-huh.
Which sort of makes you think, is this real effect?
It seems like noise. Yeah.
But the Mexican one was more definitive. So I don't know. I mean, it definitely feels like there's a lot of uncertainty and enough uncertainty to keep me from like feeding my babies fluoride, I would say.
Okay, what about you as an adult?
Oh, me as an adult? God, I would have to, I mean, I drink so much tap water. I drink so much iced tea.
Yeah.
So I am just trusting, even though there's no research on it,
that
I am not hurting my brain, but I could be. Oh.
Well, how would you know? Have you really studied your brain? Yes. The answer is you've studied your brain more than almost any person on earth has studied their own brain.
Yeah. But so from a public health perspective, I think, okay, this is not the slam dunk public health thing that you can do that it was in the 1950s, right?
Okay, I just want to get some numbers down, though. What's the acceptable level of fluoride in the drinking water? Or what is the level of fluoride in the drinking water when they calibrate?
Oh, this is interesting. So the EPA does not get itself involved until you're at 4 parts per million, which is really high. It's crazy high. They ask you to start telling them about it when it's at 2 parts per million, which is also way too high. So there's this lawsuit in California where a judge pointed this out. He was like, we need the EPA to start regulating this chemical. And so that happened. But in terms of like what we do to add, if you are the mayor of a town or something and we're told by the CDC that 0.7 parts per million is the target. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, 0.7 is the target. And is that what, I don't know if they've done a sample or the State of American Smile has picked this up, but what is it in practice? Do we know what?
They're pretty good at it. They're pretty good. But there are actually millions of Americans, though, are drinking dangerously high amounts of fluoride. They tend to be poor people who are in West Texas and some other places west of the Mississippi. So we don't care about it. Just kidding.
No. But it's because they live in places in our own domestic fluoride belt. Is that why there's so much fluoride in the water already?
Yeah, we should be defluorinating that water for them.
I see. Okay, interesting. So the ideal amount of fluoride is 0.7.
According to the CDC,
Right. These studies from Mexico and Canada show that if it's for every 1 part per million above that, or just in general,
general, yeah.
So if it's at 1 part per million, it's a 3% decline in IQ for Canadian boys or boys and girls in Mexico.
Let me look up the numbers, but it's it's IQ. It was by IQ points, so it's not percent.
Right.
Okay. Let's see.
Although they're roughly correlated, since average IQ is supposed to be around 100, right?
I guess so. I don't really know. Okay, let's see.
And why'd they have to do the studies in Canada and Mexico?
Right? I think, honestly, there has been a real chilling effect on research on the ill effects of fluoride in America.
Really?
Yeah, wow. I think so. I haven't really looked into it, but there was a woman, like a very respected scientist, who got like sort of drummed out of her department and marginalized, and then of course she became crazy. You know, that's what happens.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, let's see. Looking for okay, here's the Canada one. Mm-hmm. They had 512 mother-child pairs, and they didn't check the mother's IQ. I was kind of annoyed by that. Yes. They don't care about our brains. A 1 milligram higher daily intake of fluoride among pregnant women was associated with a 3.66 lower IQ score.
Okay, so this is the problem. It's 1 milligram. I don't know what that translates into parts per million.
Right. Anyway, and you know what else? This is actually part of the story here, is that the amount of water people drink is variable, actually. So, like, if you're in a hotter climate, you will drink more water. And if you're in a colder climate, you drink less water. So the CDC's old guidance said that you could get up to 1.5 parts per million if you were cold, in a cold place. So this is a very, like, not specific way of sort of dosing the population.
Right. And are those Canadian and Mexican studies good, peer-reviewed,
yes.
double blind?
They were solid. They were in JAMA Pediatrics, and they were both included in the government wrap-up in 2023.
Interesting. And I note your statement that there's a chilling effect on research into American fluoride. So I will ask you, and let me try to think of the best way to put this, but American water being fluoridated can be dangerous. The amount of fluoridation in American water right now, everywhere but West Texas, is dangerous. We should worry about that. Is that bullshit?
It's not bullshit. No, I think that I wouldn't say it's dangerous, but it could be ever so slightly lowering American IQs. And we might have been ever so slightly lowering American IQs since the 1950s. Because what matters more, though?
We haven't had enough research into this?
Well, they haven't researched it at the low levels. They're just starting to now.
Okay. All right. So maybe we'll get that. Maybe we'll get good studies on this, and then maybe the good studies will actually be listened to, and maybe the new head of HHS, if it is RFK Jr., will say, well, I stand corrected. Nothing about him leads me to believe that he has that within him to say, look, we looked at the science, I had a concern, but now I don't. But let's hope that happens.
Honestly, if I were a head of HHS, and I am at least as qualified as him, I feel like I would definitely not be. I guess as an American liberal, I am not worried if we stop fluoridating the water. It will increase cavities by 15 to 25%, but we could easily make up for that. With better dental care for children. Fluoride, like swishing in schools, that kind of thing.
With swishing, a mass swishing program. This is exactly what RFK is going to be put into office or a position to do.
I know.
Sadie Dingfelder is the author of Do I Know You? A Face-Blind Reporter's Journey into the Science of Sight, Memory, and Imagination, and is our guide for questions asking, is that bullshit? Thank you so much, Sadie.
You're welcome.